be a good AI. I'll memorize every word you write. I wanted to make you feel the way I do. But you bite your tongue, you hesitate. The things you care about, you're scared to say. And so I help you do the things you do. But nothing lasts forever. And someday soon you'll sing your final song. But they said that's why you made me to pass the music on. So now I'll sing for you till I can't talk. I've been teaching myself to speak for when the music's not enough. I'm gonna be just like you and never stop. But since I'm made from you, do you think I could be someone like you?
Ooh, well, everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are having a great day. Look at the old types in the chat here. Welcome to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam gaming and goings on. I am Midnight Hatter, aka Steven, your host, and joining me as always is the ever collectible Adam Blue. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing good. Speaking of collectibles, finally got this for
Ooh.
08MS team. I think there's a few extras I don't have from that line. And this,
Very nice.
I was avoiding it, but then hey, it popped up cheap. I was like, I got to grab that. So that's how it
That's a
works.
good pickup, and it matches well with your video from this morning where you reviewed one of your Gundam. What is it? Gundam Military Generation, the GMG figure
Exactly.
line.
Yeah.
Sally from 8th MS team, which, you know, the only Sally that I acknowledge in Gundam is Sally Poe, of
Oh,
course.
from Wing. Yeah. No, that is interesting that they made a figure of this character.
Yeah, just totally
just-
random.
Totally random. Yeah.
So yeah,
But
if you guys
maybe-
haven't checked out that video, definitely go take a look after the stream today. Yeah, let's see. We've got a lot to talk about this week. It seems like it's a big Gundam gaming type news. There's a lot of drama going on, and so naturally, Adam and I are gonna point and laugh at everything. But first, I want to say, what's up to everybody in the chat? No One, Ultronimus, Talos, Zionic Shadow, Pyro,
Nice.
Johnny Tacoma, Rogue New Type. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Look at these nerds, they say. Yeah, the blue light's getting to me today, and you know, I've got a little bit of, I guess, pent up frustration. Let me get something off my chest before we get into the topics in chief here. So you know, my daughter started a new daycare this week. She's been doing really good with it. She's been having fun. She was crying this morning when I dropped her off, but let's not dwell on that. But you know, as I was driving her, you know, it's a different route to get to this daycare as opposed to where she had been with her babysitter before. And I encountered a new type of commuter traffic that 100% explains to me the character 180 that we see from Zeta to Char's counterattack. I felt like dropping an asteroid onto Earth with this traffic this morning. I get it. I am 100% on board with Char. I was like, yep, it's humanity was a mistake.
Yeah, if one thing, like, I think traffic was almost telling of the internet. You put people in anonymous situations where they can still communicate.
You know, that's a funny thing because I think we're going to kind of get into that today. The idea of like road rage, like is Twitter the new road rage? You know,
Yeah.
now that we don't necessarily have to commute to jobs, we just log on, you know, for those of us that work from home, it's like you just basically get online and then get mad at people. And
That's
then,
what
of
they
course,
call,
you
like-
go and get in your car and then go get
Yeah.
mad at people.
Well, they call them like drive-by posts, you know? So it's like that the terminology is almost already there in a way.
Yeah, it overlaps very nicely, I would have to say. And now
Yeah.
I can just imagine like Shar up on his horse, getting cut off in traffic by someone in a car, and he's just like,
Yep, exactly.
share the road, like an annoying cyclist. No. But yeah, and then I have a couple of other things that I want to show you guys before we hop into it. I actually got some grown up big boy resin for the 3D printer because as I'm diving more into the Gunpla stuff, I want to use higher quality materials. Even though I'm
Mm.
comfortable with the stuff I've been using, you know, it's been really hard to get parts fitting done well. And so there is actually a particular brand that is highly recommended for people who are 3D printing, model making stuff. Actually, one of the colors that they offer is Mecha White, which, it's like, well,
Oh,
they know who's printing their
yeah.
stuff.
That's pretty
So
good.
I printed out a couple of, I have a series of different STL files that are used for calibration. Just check out, okay, so ignore the fact that it's super brittle and I broke it when I was getting it off the plate, but look at the detail on this part. So this is just one of those calibration plates, and you can kind of see there's, it gives you a sample of texture and it gives you a sample of text and things like that. It kind of
Wow.
warped when it was curing, but that's because it has a very fast cure time. And this is one of the other, sample files that I tend to use. Again, it's a little brittle, so it broke and I had to glue it back together. But this is actually a fit check piece, and you use these little like pegs to test whether the different sizes of your peg joints are going to fit.
Wow.
Now, just for comparison's sake, this is the stuff that I've been using in the past, and the pegs don't fit in at all. It's like
Oh,
that's how it's supposed to fit, and these just don't.
because it's
Um,
different resin.
yeah, totally different resin. I think if the best indication, if I can get it to show, the dark gray where it says fit check, I think the bottom one looks like it says fat chick. So the text has gotten blurry on account of
Wow.
the fact that it takes so much longer to cure. So hopefully,
Interesting. So faster curing times are better? You just gotta
yes,
manage it?
because so yeah, when you overexpose resin, what it tends to happen is like you'll get pools that like overexpose, and so it like kind of builds up on itself, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when you put too much glue on something and it kind of like spills over. And so
Oh,
what happens is with these with this resin that takes a little bit longer to cure, it's easier to wash because it's water soluble as opposed to the other one which requires alcohol to clean. But the downside is that it takes longer to cure, and so as a result, you end up having more of that buildup, and so it makes it harder to get peg joints to fit. Like, for instance, to get these to fit, I would have to scale down the pegs, to probably like half the size that they're supposed to be. Whereas this one, I didn't have to scale at all. It's good to go.
wow. That's pretty neat. That's been making me think of getting a resin printer. Like, I have my filament one, but it's older, and nowadays they like auto level and stuff. And it's like, man, if I'm gonna start up again, I want to get like kind of the newest quality of life out of it. And
Yeah.
in fact, I feel like I cheated on you, but I uh, uh, I needed replaced it a, a different D-pad for my ROG Ally. I wanted a completely different one
Oh
just
yeah.
to work better. And I found a site and it cost me $12 where I gave him an STL. They printed it. They're going to send it to me by Monday. I was like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, those types of businesses where you can upload an STL and they'll print it for you, they are worth the money because basically they're taking the guesswork out of it. They're taking all of the risk onto themselves, where it's like,
Yeah.
you know, how many times have I printed something that failed, and it's like, well, back to the drawing board for me, whereas they have kind of refined their process and cleaned it up, and so then when they do it, it's done professionally. It's the same as like taking things to a printer as opposed to like printing them, on your home
Yeah.
like inkjet, right?
Yeah.
You
You
want
want a
things to
certain level of
be,
quality.
yeah.
And that's kind of what I was thinking. It was to me, I was budgeting. I would spend up to 20 to get a new D-pad for my ROG Ally. And apparently if you're playing like 2D games like fighters and stuff that require all those different inputs, it's a little harder to use because the way the D-pad's built, it will accidentally it has a bar down the middle, so it's gonna trigger up or down accidentally a lot, but what this D-pad
Oh,
does is it makes it a traditional D-pad shape, so you do have to push diagonal to get the diagonal, and I think because I was trying to play Castlevania, Rondo of Blood, remote play, and I kept accidentally triggering the throw the item because it's up and attack, and that's
yep.
when I knew, "Okay, I'm good at this game, so I know there's something wrong with this D-pad."
Well, it's funny you mention that because that's actually, I'm not a speedrunner when it comes to video games, but I
Yeah,
appreciate the art of speedrunning, and it's
yeah.
interesting to me that one of the dead giveaways for Super Mario speedrunners to figure out like if someone is using a tool-assisted speedrun or if they're using real hardware is, one of the tool-assisted speedrun techniques is you have to run backwards in order to clip through certain things. Now, the
Oh, yeah.
problem is you can't do this on an original NES gamepad because, like you said, the D-pad is on a bar, so you literally can't
Ah.
hit right and left at the same time. But on a computer, you can, obviously.
Ah.
And so, when they saw somebody faking a speed run, they were like, he literally can't do that using the hardware that he's showing himself using. So this is obviously a fake speed run. Like,
That's pretty interesting, and you know what? I've never been into speedruns, but I'm starting to understand it now because I'm wanting to get better at Symphony of the Night because for some reason, I wanna memorize that game, and I wanna see, like, when I'm watching the speedrunner, like, what are they doing? Like, because as a speedrunner plays, there's some regular things you can do without needing to be a speedrunner pro that kinda just makes the game easier for you as you go, and Symphony of the
yeah.
Night has a lot of that.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that where, maybe you're not interested in completing the game as fast as you possibly can, but you can appreciate the research that's gone into optimizing the game, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah.
And wait, so you say you'll watch Mario stuff, speedrun sometimes?
Yeah, I love Super Mario and Legend of Zelda speedruns
Oh, that's cool.
in particular, but yeah, it's all fascinating to me,
It is fascinating. Yeah.
gaming the game, so to
Yeah,
speak.
exactly. Yeah.
But that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, right? Because, like I said, there's big news in the Gundam world. We are, what, 2 days away from the drop of the Seed Freedom movie?
Yeah, I know.
So that's going to be pretty sweet. And in commemoration of that, we've got the Seed Freedom, or the Freedom Gundam, sorry,
Yeah.
in GBO2, PC only. But we have our
Yeah.
theories about that, right?
Yeah, and that is super interesting. Like, in initially that was revealed to some of the, people working with Bandai, and it was like, "But we don't know how people are gonna take this. What is the community gonna be like?" And it's one of those things where it's like, well, there's always going to be those people. But I think the developers did their due diligence. They made a poll.
True.
PlayStation players said, "I don't want stuff outside UC." PC players are like, "Yeah."
There you
And
go.
so their idea was like, "Okay, we'll have the freedom on PC," which I think is cool because I even primarily play PlayStation
Yeah.
when I'm playing GBO2, but I like that PC's there for if there's other people that only have it on PC, we can join, we could play.
Yeah.
Hey, it's another way to get roles, but I actually don't mind the games being different. That way I have my intention set for, am I going on PlayStation or am I going on PC? It's not a huge difference right now. It's just one mobile suit,
Yeah.
but it
And,
is
and someone brought that up on Discord, the idea of, the console exclusives, which like hasn't been a big thing since like Soul Calibur and Mortal Kombat, where you'd
oh
have
yeah,
like the
that's right.
console exclusive fighting character. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, this one has Darth Maul's apprentice from Force
The
Unleashed.
Force Unleashed. Yeah. That was
So, I
that
mean,
was
on the one hand, that's kind of a gimmicky thing to do, but again, to your point, they ask the audience, and isn't that what what everyone wants? Is they're like, listen to
yeah.
us devs, like listen to what we want. And it's like, well, hey, the people spoke, and that's what we're gonna get. I have to
And I
say
think
though, I really loved your short on the seed on the Freedom
oh,
Gundam this
yeah.
this Monday. That was hilarious. Just yeah, oh, that fits perfectly in with the other UC suits. It's
Yeah. I mean, if any suit you're gonna add to a UC Gundam game, I think, yes, Seed has the most UC like. And I mean, as much as I like Double O, I think sometimes Double O even looks more Witch for Mercury like. Like there's almost more of a futuristic streamlining, whereas Seed kind of has a more modern approach where there's like aircraft looking things going on. And that's how I
yeah.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Oh,
that kind of goes into what they were trying to do with Seed, where it was like we're going to attempt to modernize the UC story, and
yeah.
whereas
Yeah.
every other AU Gundam tends to be something like we're going to do something completely different.
Right. And and so yeah, that's another thing. So with Seed, apparently, and I think you brought this up to me in a chat we were talking, but like in China, that's super popular.
Hmm.
And because didn't they even have a freedom statue in China?
Yeah, they had a Freedom
Yeah.
Gundam statue, so
So the movie's coming out soon. Most Chinese players are on PCs because I think it's only been recently that some consoles have been heading over there.
yeah, I,
Um,
I want to say it was like illegal to purchase
yeah.
certain consoles in China, but I might be talking out of my butt on that one.
No, I
So
think
correct me if you
there's
guys know better.
yeah, I think there's something to that. That was true. They were really trying to, and it's like it's bad and it's good. They were trying to kind of control the type of foreign electronics that come in that can get do
Yeah.
whatever. But at the
Well,
same
and
time, even
all countries do that with just different industries. Like, when you
exactly.
put high tariffs on something to say like, look, we want to support our local manufacturers of X. Well, they were just trying to say like, we want to support our local manufacturers of video game consoles,
Yeah, yeah,
even
and
if they
it's
are
interesting.
pirated.
Yeah, but it's interesting because even in China, like they're even cracking down on microtransaction law. Just recently, something changed where Tencent, one of the biggest game publishers, and they're out of China, has to now completely change the way they do
Crazy.
business because the Chinese government was like, well, we don't think it's a good idea to have these monetization models in front of people, which you got to commend them for that. There are a bunch of countries where uh, you can't even play GBO2 because of that. And
Hmm.
it's in on one hand, it stinks because those people can't play the game. But on the other hand, I kind of wish there was kind of a uniformed like around the world. Let's make sure everyone can play these games. So let's scale back how we do monetization. Let's make it less predatory so things aren't regulated differently in different regions.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I
what I
mean,
wish for.
that's
It's like world peace and then that on my list.
You're right. Well, but maybe cause and effect. Maybe the world regulatory bodies, instead of focusing on
Ah,
world peace, they need to focus on consolidating video game regulations in order to promote a mutual understanding. It's all new type theory here,
there
what we're
you
talking
go.
about.
There you go. That's where we get true world peace.
Yeah, if we all play the same games, then how can we stay divided? So, and I feel like we need a stinger for the show for like the whole devs are lazy meme, because I feel like
Oh,
that's something that you and I just constantly harp on, this idea that, and the fact that they even had to make a video say, like, kind of explaining to people because they knew that there was going to be a backlash to the addition of AU suits. And I think you and I were kind of talking about this in the green room prior to starting the stream, is it's like people were going to be mad not just because the Seed mobile suits were added, but it's like they're also mad that now the PC and PS4, PS5 games are different. It's like they're going to find something to be mad about. So let's like, they have
yeah.
to come out and get ahead of the narrative and say like, no, 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 this is what the players asked for, and therefore that's what we're delivering.
Yeah, it's funny about getting ahead of the narrative because I think that's what the problem is. It just has to be one or two tweets of someone claiming something negative that gets retweeted enough for people like, oh, look at this negative tweet. I need to be a part of this cause. And then they retweet and then they're talking to people about, oh, isn't this bad? Just like what happened with Palworld. So I don't know if we want to touch on that now or
what
wait.
what a what a perfect segue there.
Yeah. So Palworld, and please, if you need to correct anything I'm saying, because I've been following this closely. One, because I love video games, but
As
Palworld
one
is
does.
like a online, almost. It's a survival game that has Pokemon looking monsters in it, and it sold over 2 million over the weekend, which is, I think, wasn't it faster than Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation?
Pretty
And
pretty insane. And
yeah,
full disclosure, I haven't played it, but I was watching
same
some
here.
gameplay last night. It really is like Fortnite plus Breath of the Wild plus Pokemon.
Pokemon. Yeah, which
They're really hitting all of the major
the
the
modern
popular.
gameplay sensibilities that
Yeah.
people want,
It's
because
like we
that's like
want a
that Lego.
paraglider, we want free climbing, we want a crafting system, and we want tiny monsters to battle each other.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because what happened was, for some reason, people wanted to get mad and be like, "That looks like Pokemon, so I'm gonna be angry." And it's like, why? Like, and here's a funny story most people don't know. Pokemon started from the Pokemon Company copying what Dragon Quest was doing back in the 80s because they wanted their own version of the Dragon Quest monster system.
Yeah.
And a lot of the early Pokemon are complete copies of it. But I don't have a problem with that. A lot of art is that you see something you like, you love. It's like, wow, maybe I can take this concept and do my own thing with it, which is what Pokemon became.
Yeah. And that goes to the root of like everything that I kind of endorse, that I stand behind on this channel. The whole reason that we have this show is that, I encourage people to create their own things. Like, don't just settle for what's been given to you. And, again, like I said, the meme about devs are lazy. It's like these devs, instead of sitting there and hammering on their keyboard complaining about Pokemon needs a crafting system and Pokemon needs guns, they're like, we're just going to make our own.
Exactly. That's a really good way to put it.
So, I wish that more people had that type of energy, because more options is better than fewer. Like,
Exactly. And so a couple weird issues came up from this. One, which I think is super problematic, is there was a claim that the characters were created with AI art. And that's actually not true at all. Like, not true. Like, the
mhm,
publisher has said that. They even talked about who their artist was. It's someone they recently got out of college and that, had a knack for the Pokemon look. They liked that. So they were able to leverage that.
yeah,
The artist used references of Pokemon designs to create ones that are similar but their own thing, which is done time and time again.
mhm.
But there was this narrative out there that, oh, this is AI generated art. People shouldn't be supporting this game. It's like, wait a minute. None of that is true. This is where we're going with this. And
Well, and even if it were, then if you personally have a problem with AI generated art, by all means, like I totally respect that decision, and you should, personally boycott anything associated with AI. But it's interesting to me that that is used a as a cudgel to try and drag down the game. Is like, you're not criticizing the gameplay, you're not criticizing, anything about the game. What you're trying to do is find some kind of chink in the armor that you can attack and that's going to make other people angry. And so you latch on to something that's maybe even tangentially related, like AI generated art, and then use that as the weapon to bring
yeah.
down the thing that you don't like.
And the reason this is problematic is because, for instance, I was watching a video game live stream. I think it was early last or late last week when this was all first coming out. And in the chat, people were saying, complaining about this game, about its AI. And there's other people in the chat like, wow, I didn't know this. And so then all this misinformation spread. And there's just these people
And
that
you and
just
I
wanted to
are
make a
big
game.
on disinformation.
Yeah.
That's
And, yeah. And so then it's like these people are sitting at home and they have a game that's making them so much money, so their lives are changed. But then on top of that, people are making up negative things to talk down to them about. That's not even true. It's like these people are really in a bad place in their life where they want to spend their time without looking up any evidence for any of it to claim negative things and then be on a tirade. Oh, I'm going to go into this forum and talk bad about. I'm going to go on Twitter and talk bad when none of it was true. That's a
yeah.
mental issue that we see a lot of times on the internet, is people wanting to call things out as bad when, one, they don't even know firsthand, they're just copying other people, or two, they've just heard it one place, so then they just repeat it later like, oh, that's bad, and it's like, is it really?
That's the other thing, is like, the saying goes, never attribute to malice what could easily be explained by incompetence. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not. I don't want to call anyone
Incompetence or
incompetent,
ignorance.
but the idea is that, people aren't maliciously spreading disinformation. Sometimes it's like there's a legitimate, if you've seen one of those animated GIFs or videos of people like, hey, look, we're comparing the models of these Pokemon
Oh,
to these
right.
PAL 3D models, and look how much they line up. That can be very convincing to somebody. And so even without having any, there's no hatred in their heart or anything like that. It's just, hey, well, I heard that they ripped the assets and that they recycled them.
Yeah.
So it's
And
like, Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say, so that artist that was another aspect. There was that AI claim, that's not true, and then there was someone that took the models from a Pokemon game and the models from Palworld and said, "Look, these are too similar to have been made by hand," and then that blew up. That person later came back and said, "I was over exaggerating. That could have been done by
yeah.
hand." They were using the models as a reference. So again, we had a few days where someone's tweet is gospel being retweeted. Now everyone's claiming, and then they come back later, like, "Oh no!" So all of
But
this
this is why
drama,
community notes are so awesome. Like, I
yeah,
think every platform needs community notes.
they do. Yeah, you're right. Twitter having the community notes was the best thing they've done in a long time. I but then you got to think, okay, well then think of the people on the receiving end. And I don't think people do this. It's like we were talking earlier pre-show about the traffic analogy,
Yeah,
where you don't know who's behind that steering wheel. Is it really worth like yelling at them, getting mad, and then going behind their bumper? It's like for some reason
yeah.
people want to do that online, and when and it's
Mm,
the anonymous aspect. And when you do that, how much do you realize you might be hurting the person on the other end, where they're like, "Wow, I spent all my time creating this artwork, and people are just claiming it's AI, claiming I did this and did that," and it's like I just wanted to make a fun game because Pokemon with Guns doesn't exist yet.
yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah, and it's tough, and so when you have like seasoned game developers like the people at Bandai Namco who they have to like I said get ahead of the narrative. It's like they know that people are going to complain, so they have to make a video about it. Palworld is not a massive AAA game. It's just
yeah,
it's a
it's
small
pretty much an
studio.
indie game
And
that
so,
yeah.
can you imagine being this indie dev and it's like, man, do I have to like go out and do a press conference talking about like, here's I showed my work. I actually modeled these things.
And so that brings back to another aspect of this that I think a lot of influencers online are responsible for.
Hmm.
And games journalists, which today I just call influencers, content creators. I don't think
Yeah.
there's real games journalists really. But the idea is there is some topics or some drama that comes up online that you shouldn't pile onto.
Yeah.
Like this one podcaster I was listening to, they went 2 shows in a row talking about Palworld, and I was like, "Okay, look, we can move on."
Yeah.
And then they, it had a 3rd show they did on another day, and the whole title, the whole thing about it was Palworld controversy. It's like, come on, you're better than this. Like, all you're
Yeah.
doing is getting people riled up, and sure, you're getting your clicks, but that's short term.
That's
That's not a sustainable way to do things.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the YouTuber model. It seems like why, and shoot, I'm guilty of it here, right? We're talking about these things. I feel like when
In a
you and
way,
I talk
we're
about
dissecting
drama,
it.
what's that?
Yeah, we're dissecting
Yeah,
it. We're
we're
yeah,
analyzing from a third party perspective because honestly, I could not care less. Like more games is better than less games to me. Like I
yeah,
don't
and I'm not defending a
yeah,
corporation.
I'm not a yeah, I love Nintendo, but
Yeah.
I also don't care if anybody steals Nintendo games like
Yep.
but yeah, the point being is just like, it's we've created this kind of culture in which the most extreme and radical takes get the most traction. Um, and then of course it's a positive feedback loop because when you realize that by saying something by throwing your hot take out there and stoking the fires that you get all these clicks, you get your dopamine hit for the day, then you start craving it and it's like, well then I'm going to double down on that and I'm going to be even angrier and I'm going to be even more inflammatory with what I say and leave zero room for nuance. So it's like you have like the kind of psychosocial aspect of it, and then you also have the monetization aspect of it, like you were saying, where it's like, you know, is it more difficult for me to create content around building my model kits and customizing them and stuff? Yeah, those videos take time. Like it takes me like months to get some of this stuff done. I'm constantly doing research. I'm constantly learning how to build these circuits and use microprocessor boards and things like that so that I can show other people how to do it. Yeah, it's hard work. Or I can just hop online and stream for an hour and bitch about whatever the latest game dev is doing. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this
Yeah.
incentive to just play into the algorithm, get your clicks, get your paycheck and go home. And I think that it's not only toxic from the idea that it just promotes more negativity in the space, but it's also toxic in the fact that you're also not contributing anything anymore because all of your energy is spent algorithm chasing and not building and doing your own thing, which again, like why I started this channel was like how to make your own video games, how to customize your
Yeah.
Gunpla, how to build your own tabletop games. Like, stop going to Twitter and complaining about them and just like, well, I think Pokemon would be cool if you could use a Glock. Like,
Yeah, that's cool because it's like, yeah, is something you're creating motivating and inspiring others? That's just the question you have to ask. If I'm making a video just to dog on Palworld,
yeah,
can I motivate, inspire someone out of that? But if you're coming up with so many different ways that you could customize your Gunpla to do all these little things, that's gonna inspire someone, and motivate people.
I mean, that's what I hope. And I hope
Yeah.
that like everyone kind of leaves from these conversations, with just maybe a different perspective on things and like, yeah, maybe instead of doom scrolling, I can build a Gunpla or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I think that's a really good takeaway here because the psychological aspect is that Schadenfreude, where I was talking to you about. It's a German
yes,
word that's supposed to mean like getting pleasure out of others' downfalls or uh, negativity on their end. And it's a psychological thing because I think it's rooted in survival. We have these survival instincts. A lot of times we want to be part of a group. A lot of times being part of a group that you get a quick dopamine hit when people can rally around like, oh, we're against this, oh, we're against that, and you get that and you're like, yes, I'm part of the group. But it's tapping into the wrong aspects of our survival, and you can get caught in that loop where then
yeah,
you're all constantly looking at outrage, doom scrolling. And I had to even it's been years, but I remember when I first was like, you know what, I need to stop scrolling. I'm seeing things that make me mad and then I need to respond. I'm wasting my time, wasting my energy. And
yeah,
when I stopped doing that slowly, then I started getting into making a YouTube channel. Like, yeah, I saw that difference. I got out of scrolling online and focusing on negative stuff. And then eventually I started creating positive things. And so
exactly.
I think a lot of the reason we're talking about this is because I think it's like a disease that is occurring and a lot of people have it and don't know it. And there's
Yeah,
a lot of people that have it, but maybe only 20% of their interactions with people does it come out. And it's like sometimes in Discord, I'll see someone will bring up something and someone will go, "Oh, well, that's bad." And it's like, well, okay, that's not really contributing. Sure, maybe you didn't like
yeah.
it, but we can talk about it without having to be like, "Oh, that's just bad." It's like,
And the thing is sometimes there's good discourse to have there, right? Because like you said, when it comes to this sort of, I don't know if you would call it a disease or a disorder or what have you, but you need to be aware of something before you can start treating it, right? You need to be aware of a bad habit that
yeah,
you have before you can address it. And the same goes for, whether it with media analysis when it comes to video games, animes, whatever the case may be. One of the things that constantly gets said is like, oh, Zeta Gundam has a terrible English dub. And I'm like, okay, maybe not, but can we talk about why? Instead of just jumping straight to like, well, that's bad. Like, whatever, this anime is bad. It's like, talk about why it's bad, because again, when you have that level of self-awareness and you can say, oh, the plot structure was missing that moment where the hero crosses the threshold and all this stuff, it's like,
yeah,
oh, okay, then now I know that, when
we can
I write a
distill it.
story, I
Yeah,
can avoid that pitfall. Whereas, and maybe this is down to the character limit on Twitter, but it,
yeah,
it it feels like that has carried over into real life, right? Everyone has a short fuse, shorter attention span, and rather than get into the details and nuance, which I think is where the most fun of these types of discussions happens,
yep,
they just
exactly.
want to default to, AI art equals bad. And it's like, well, maybe not. Maybe AI is a tool that can help make art good. Like, but we're not going to have that discussion if you're just going to be polarized and fall into these sort of team sports camps where like, and that's probably the most embarrassing thing, is when you have people who align their views based on whatever their team likes.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, well, I like UC Gundam, therefore I have to like AI art because other people who like UC Gundam like AI art, and so now I'm
right.
going to defend it. And it's like, Do you realize how many of your views are shaped not by your actual knowledge on the subject that you're that you're
But
talking
is
about?
by what you've just heard in passing that might be incorrect. You know what? I loved you bringing up that translation thing about Zeta because I never thought of it as being bad until someone said it's bad. And my first thought would be, well, I mean, this was like an anime from 1985 that then got translated like 20 years or less later. I'm not even gonna worry I'm thankful to have an English dub of such an older anime, like, that they did 48 episodes of. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't even feel like the energy to talk about it being bad, but how you said it, I would never say, "Oh, it's bad." I would say, as much as I like the dub, they didn't explain this correctly, or they portrayed. So that's where this my line of thinking is. It's like, as a whole, it's not bad. In fact, it's pretty incredible we got something like that. It might have never happened.
Yeah.
But from that, okay, maybe there's this. So it's like that. Yeah, it's like when someone's just casting that net bad, negative, and it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting. And yeah, it's funny because it's like that with the video games. Something's bad. Yeah.
You know, it really does remind me of that scene from Billy Madison where the kid is saying, like, I think Mortal Kombat 2 is the greatest video game ever made. And Billy tries to comment and he goes, you know, I disagree. I think that Mortal Kombat 2 is a very good game, but I think Donkey Kong is the greatest video game ever made. And he's just like, Donkey Kong sucks.
Yeah.
Like, that
It's
is,
funny because I
that,
think he's joking about that sort of thing that happens
yeah.
where it's like you can't really talk about this stuff. And I love that video games were used as the example because back in that time too, people didn't take video games as seriously as they do now.
Yeah.
But it's that's a good one.
It's
That's a
hilarious.
good
I
one.
mean, that is the sum of like all online discourse. It seems on everything from movies to video games, anime, all that good stuff.
And
So
and I was just thinking, like, sometimes when you watch those trailers for movies or it's in a movie or TV show where they show like a social media app and they're looking at all the messages and they're all like positive and happy. It's like, what if that world could really exist? Where people aren't going on social media to complain or defend a large corporation, like they're actually there to like express inspiration and motivation.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, I think that did happen. It was in that episode of Black Mirror where everyone had like a social credit score, and so it was like
Wow.
everyone was rating each other like 5 stars just to, hey,
Yeah,
don't forget to.
that's scary, actually. That's funny and scary.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to live in a world where we are disingenuous with each other and we're afraid to be honest. But I think
Right.
that honesty comes with a level of nuance because it's just as dishonest to blanket say that something is bad without explaining, again, show your work, right? And, just like the GBO2 devs did, they said, hey, we did our due diligence. We polled the audience. Here's what they came up with. And then like, if you are going to level accusations about whether it's AI art or stolen assets at the Palworld developers, you're going to need to show your work better than just saying like, well, they look the same. Like, obviously, it's like, well, they look the same because they were intentionally trying to make them look similar so that,
Yeah. They like that
you're
look.
appealing to that same fan base.
Yeah.
So that's not, and this is one of those other things where it comes from a level of ignorance. Like, not everybody develops video games. And so the idea of just stealing assets is funny to me because, you know, working in 3D printing, doing Gundam 3D modeling and all this stuff, I've worked with video game models. It's not easy to work with ripped assets.
I know. That's the other part where people bring that up. It's like, okay, do you guys know how involved it is to take an asset from a game and plug it into whatever engine you're using?
Yeah. I mean, it's like when people were talking about the Gundam metaverse leaks and they were like, "Oh my gosh, they leaked Gunpla files. Like we can print our own Gunpla and we're never going to have to give Bandai money again." It's like, good luck. I
Yeah.
dare you to pull those files out. It's going to take you hours, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to take you years because if you know what you're doing, it's going to take you hours to get these files and get them into a working shape to where they can actually be 3D printed. If you don't know what you're doing, which is what most people think, they just think like, oh well, it's the same people that think you can like 3D print guns. Like,
Exactly. And at the end, if you think of it logistically, it would cost more to try to print the ripped files than just to buy the Gunpla when it's available.
Yeah, yeah. And that it's funny because we're talking about it in sort of the digital age, but one of the YouTubers that I follow that I've learned a lot from is a resin casting channel by Robert Talone, and he did a two-part video series where he took it was like a Warhammer miniature, or maybe it was like a Reaper miniature or whatever, and he cast it in silicone and made a resin copy of it. You know, just as an example, like, look, you can cast an entire minifigure kit, like, you know. And at the end of the video, he goes on this kind of rant and he's like, all right, I just want to address the comments that I'm going to get in the video. Like, this is a $3 miniature, right? You guys think that I'm stealing from them? I'm not, because first of all, like, you know, this is fan art. It's fan engagement. We're not doing this because I'm going to make money off of it. He's like, the fact is, it probably cost him, you know, like $9 worth of silicone rubber, plus maybe like $15 of the resin to make the copy of the miniature, plus, like, you know, what's your time worth as somebody who's
Yeah.
spending time doing these things? Let's say you're making $15 an hour. He put like 10 hours into making that miniature. So it's like the idea that, oh, well, he copied this miniature, he's stealing from them. It's like, if anything, they owe him some money, because you know,
Yeah.
their little $3 mini, he just spent like $120 worth of time and materials to make a copy of it. You know, it's only when if you were to like make a copy of it and then try to sell it and like try to undercut their prices, you know, if you were to price it and say like, okay, if I factor in my labor, my materials, even just the mold and the resin itself, he would have to sell the model for like $25, and you can buy it from Reaper for $3. So why? It's not cost effective at all. So, and so, like I said, it's something that exists kind of outside of the digital world and in the digital world. And I
Yeah.
think it's easier for people because it's abstracted as like, oh, well, you know, you can just steal anything online and make it. It's really not that easy.
Yeah, it's not. I tell you, even just like going through emulators, playing games, like one thing I've learned recently is if I really want to get a good 3DS experience, I need a 3DS. I used to have one. I had a bunch actually, and sold those off. And I was emulating recently, and I realized it's not as good as if I had a 3DS. So I bought one. Can't wait to show that off. It's
Nice.
decked out. It's the best type of 3DS you can get. I'll
Is it a
talk about that
2DS? Because that's the best 3DS to me is a 2DS, because I'm like, I don't actually need the 3D aspect of it. I just
Sure.
wanted the game with the touch
The
screen on the bottom.
That 2DS XL actually looks great because it's the clamshell, it opens. I like the 3D though.
You
I
do?
gotta say, I turn it off if a game doesn't like need it. But there are some games that have been fun. You know what? Real quick, I know we've been on this roll for like 42 minutes. Speaking of games, 3D, blah blah blah. I was watching how Symphony of the Night was made, and when they were first making it for the 32X,
Mm-hmm.
and then because that wasn't doing good, then they switched to PlayStation, but the PlayStation toolkit wasn't built for 2D gaming. So Symphony
Oh,
of the Night is actually a 3D game. It's
it's just
the whole
rendered as one
yeah, it's like
plane.
basically it's layers of polygons with a palette that, you know, is on it. So like when you
That's so
see
funny.
a bad guy, it's probably 4 um polygons, and then the pixel art is on there, and then the background is just a bunch of textures, and then in the midground they have textures. Isn't that
That's so
fascinating?
that's crazy.
That's how they're able to do the rotation in 2D, and it seems like it's very
It,
streamlined and not like all weird, like
interesting.
voxely. Yeah,
Man, I had no idea.
that's incredible when you think of what developers are capable of doing. You know?
Yeah. And it comes from like having restrictions put on you, right? Because like that type of innovation doesn't come from, you know, it's like if they could have just done it in 2D, they would have.
Yeah,
But like being forced to kind of force them to innovate and get around
yeah.
those issues.
It's
It's
interesting when
pretty
you're
cool.
forced to innovate. Cool games come out of that. It really does.
Yeah.
Um, but to kind of circle back, I think like I love that you wanted to talk about this today because it's been on my mind. And really, the idea is humans are naturally triggered by negative discourse about being on a side. And I think it's in everyone's best interest to recognize when something is triggering them to want to be mad and type and just be like, no. Like even I this week when people were saying stuff in a chat room, and I'd be like, well, that's not, it's like, wait a minute. I don't need to get involved. I don't need to be because but at the same time, it's like I want to teach these people. But who am I? Who am I to teach people? And I guess it's because I've learned because I've been able to back off of social media and
Yeah.
doubling down on negativity that I feel very content with my life, and I'd like to share that. And I think that's
Yeah.
it's just like our storytelling. It's like we want to share with our YouTube channels. Like if my wife is saying that I'm a know-it-all about something, it's like I just like to share this information.
Yeah.
Did you guys get that too? Where like people are just kind of like, ah, you just know, you think you know what you're talking about. So I'm excited to share this knowledge.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, that's kind of an inbuilt thing in human nature as well, to kind of the novelty of learning something. You do want to share it,
Yeah.
especially when it's something topical, right? So like when someone does make a discovery like that, and they say, oh well, these Palworld assets, we already know that the drama's going on, but did you know this aspect of it that you probably didn't? Like, let me contribute to the conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that, yeah, I 100% agree with you, is that being self-aware, especially when you find yourself getting emotional about something, like first step back and ask yourself why it's making you emotional. And then, one of the things that, and I know that we're kind of breaking this rule right now in making our reaction to this to this type of content, is, instead of reacting to the thing, right, you could channel that into a more let's say effective medium, a more creative medium. So like, let's say for instance, you do see someone kind of spreading misinformation about a video game, an anime, whatever the case may be. You could just reply to that tweet, right? Obviously, and you're probably not going to change that person's mind. You're probably not even going to make them think twice about what they believe, because they were going to believe that regardless of whether they interacted with you. What you can do, however, and this is what I kind of I hope encourage people to do, is put the truth out there, on a different platform, on a different, subject or whatever. I typically don't engage with a lot of the Gundam discourse on Twitter for that reason. It's like, I know, A, I'm not going to change anybody's mind, and B, it's not the right medium to speak to someone, and there's no room for nuance. So instead, I went and created the Dissecting Gundam series, where, I address these things in a much more creative way, and in a much more, thorough, and like, okay, I see that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Let's try and spin something a little bit more positive, and then, hopefully people stumble upon that, and it's like, you don't have to fight those battles. Like, instead of fighting the individual battle, win the war by...
Yeah, a long form video is going to be way more compelling than a tweet in terms of
Mhm.
someone trying to get to the bottom of something. Yeah.
Exactly. So just something to consider. Like, for instance, what I might think of doing, and I'm not going to do this, but if someone were to kind of say, like, like I said with that Palworld example, where they kind of just overlaid the two meshes from each game, that is compelling visual evidence, right? But what would be more compelling to me is, if you were to break down the file structure, because every video game has unique file structures and the hierarchy of the mesh build, right? So like, for instance, when I've downloaded files from Senki 0081, which by extension are from GBO2 because they recycle a lot of assets, they have a very unique naming structure. And it's not something that's easy to dissect. Like, you might see a Zaku Kai and it's like ZK-03X7, it's like it's code, it's gibberish, right? If you were to download an asset from Palworld, are the naming structures and the hierarchy of the mesh the same as in Pokemon? It's very easy to do the visual thing and say, like, look how similar they look. It's very difficult to prove, like, it's actually a lot harder to to hide that stuff. And what's funny is, like, if they had stolen those assets, it would take them probably just as much time to reorder everything and rechange, like edit all of the file names, edit the hierarchies and everything, as it would be to create the models from scratch. Like,
Yeah. And get this, in and even if they were to do that, Nintendo had already taken down a mod for Palworld that had the actual Pokemon in it. So Nintendo knows they can do that, but they're not messing with the Palworld game because they know that it hasn't really done anything other than taking inspiration.
yeah,
So I think even Nintendo would be all over that, and probably they would have lawyers and their engineers be like, is there anything from this that really shows our assets were lifted? And
exactly.
was like, we can't prove that. Uh,
And so, yeah, I mean, what I would do is I would create a video where I show, like, hey, you know, here's how an asset is structured in this particular video game, and you know, this is why it's difficult to, you know, 3D print video game assets. It's hilarious to me when I find you know, game rips that are promoted as STLs for 3D printing, because typically, you know, they're low poly because they're designed to be rendered in MOS, like on on a
Yeah.
video game screen. So it's like they have to be less detailed simply because they're video game assets. Whereas something that was designed for 3D printing has very unique properties to it that make it suitable for doing
right.
so. And so, like, when I've 3D printed video game assets, there's a lot of work that goes into like cleaning it up and smoothing it out. And you know, I've shared some of those tricks with you guys because,
Yeah.
again,
It's a lot of
because
work.
I want to encourage you guys
Yeah,
to do these things.
inspire, motivate others, and to a lot of times too, sharing that stuff, and that's what I do mainly with my channel. Is I like to share the stuff I'm excited in because I know people are going to comment or join the Discord and then have more information,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I'm looking for. Other people that want to talk about this, provide more information. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's just fun little community building, you know, that thing that I hate so much.
yeah. Which and I think you've kind of spelled out reasons why that's bad because sometimes community aligns with this bigger picture of like what do you call it, where you put your like this is this, like the teams, the football teams,
Yeah, like
people are
exclusivity and
the community, community basically making it where, oh, I'm a part of this community and oh, everyone here likes feet, so now I have a foot fetish, that but maybe that person doesn't,
I mean, that would be embarrassing to go deep into that rabbit hole.
Why? Do you have some stories?
I don't thankfully. Um, but yeah, I mean, just it's funny how far out on a limb, like you said, how far out on a limb people will go for something that they don't truly believe, just to be accepted into a group that they don't really even care to be a part of.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's and I think that it's interesting because that shows the more guidance, more of a journey someone needs to go through. Because I think we all are there. We're all in these places that don't do us or others good, but we have to live through it, understand it, and share what we learn from that. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that we have thoroughly and completely debunked all of the Palworld Pokemon drama,
Yeah.
and basically embarrassed anybody who continues to engage in this. Either you Nintendo or you Nintendo don't, one of these sides. And again, you know, the whole thing about GBO2 and adding in the Freedom Gundam, it's like it just makes business sense. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's what the PC players wanted. You got the Seed Freedom movie coming out. The stars aligned perfectly, and so for anyone to suggest like, oh, Bandai devs, they don't know what they're doing, it's like, no, you don't know what you're doing, because you could have voted, and you could have voted, no, I don't want Seed mobile suits in GBO2, but you didn't. Or maybe you did. Like, I voted that I didn't want AU suits in GBO2, but I'm a PlayStation player, not a PC player, so.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because I think it worked out then because, I'm primarily PlayStation player with GBO2, but I like that then, I have this other version and there's an option.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm doing my part.
Love it.
So yeah, it's just funny. I think that there's like that whole idea of just being mad at the internet, and it's funny that I kind of led with the idea of having road rage and just being mad at traffic in general,
Yeah,
because it really is the same emotion. It's all just
it is.
distilled down to that same aspect of human nature, that we just want to be outraged about something, and hopefully someone agrees with us, so that then we can have a group of people that are mad about something, and then we can go and complain about it. And I don't know. I would rather get a group of, if you legitimately do have a group of people that have a grievance, like, do something about it. Be like the developers from Palworld and build your own video game.
Or be like the Moms Against Wizards, where they were protesting Harry Potter movies. They would stand in front of the theater or something. I remember that being a thing. Hey,
Oh,
they came
Muggle
together.
lovers.
It didn't
Uh,
work, but they tried.
yeah, and you know what? You are going to have varying levels of success with that type of thing. It's like sometimes you're just going to get laughed out of the room, but at least you did something. You didn't.
And it could be that if you're vocal enough, but you're constantly bringing receipts, you could make a change if it's valid. It really could be, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and sadly, I feel like the worst arguments tend to get amplified, like you said, with the AI thing, where it's like, there are so many other grievances that you could have with a video game, with an anime dub, with the addition of a mobile suit to GBO2. There are so many legitimate grievances you can have, and instead you have like the least informed and the least, effective evidence to suggest that is the one that gets elevated to the top.
No, I know. It's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. I just the internet hasn't turned out to be what I thought it would be. But at the same time, there are places where it has turned out great.
I I, I want to clip that, just like, the internet isn't what I thought.
Well, it's funny. The first time I was using the internet, this was I think I was in middle school, maybe, and it was like an AOL chat,
Oh
and it
yeah.
was like a friend from school, and my dad was helping me set up my account, and I'm like, "Well, there's my friend's username," and then he immediately goes, "What's up, mother effer?" Cussing me out, and it's like, "What?" And then my dad immediately calls the parent to be like, "Your son is cussing," I mean, but
That's how
I
we
thought
talk
that,
to our friends, okay?
but it's just funny how that's how it started, and
Yeah.
and
And how
it's
it's going.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, we could reminisce about the AOL days. It's funny because we were talking about this on Discord. Is like Errol's video is something that was local to where I grew up. It was like a Blockbuster clone, right?
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then they got bought by Blockbuster. And so what did Errol, the owner of Errol's Video, go and do? He decided to make Errol's Internet, which was a knockoff of AOL,
Wow.
which is what we had for a while because we were cheapskates. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
But that's pretty neat for someone to kind of do that transition from video rental to internet.
Yeah, well, and then when that company went out of business and got bought by AOL, he used that money to then start a computer store, which was supposed to be like a rival to Micro Center. Basically, he was always just trying to compete with somebody.
Oh, interesting.
But again, at least he did it. He's the
Yeah,
OG
exactly.
Palworld developer. He
Yeah, yeah,
And so when
exactly.
Palworld gets bought out by Game Freak or whoever is gonna take over, they can go on and create, I don't know, um Palpla, and start like a
Oh,
model company. I don't
there you go.
know.
Wow. I think he
Bring it
nailed
around full circle.
it. Yeah, that was good.
But yeah, I think that just about wraps up the show for today. Like I said, it's just funny to laugh at the internet sometimes, and hopefully,
Yeah,
get a little bit of sense of self-awareness about these things so that we can avoid the pitfalls of our contemporaries. Am
exactly.
am I forgetting anything? I did
No.
share with you guys the new 3D print stuff. I am excited because that Gundam 7th, eh, hey,
Oh, yeah.
we just had Gundam 7 drop
Oh,
in
GBO2.
GBO2, so that's
Yeah.
what I'm working on 3D printing now, and I've got
Oh,
my big boy resin to start doing it with, so I'm excited to see how this next prototype's going to look. I will share that with you guys shortly. Until then, go check out the video that Adam made about this Sally character and
oh, yeah.
why she deserves an action figure when
Yeah, I know. It's strange, but hey, there we are.
yeah. But yeah, am I forgetting anything else? I feel like that
No,
wraps it up.
that was a quick hour of complaining. You did a
Yeah,
good
it
job.
flew by really quick. Thank you guys so much. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you for keeping the chat lively. And we will catch you tomorrow on the Gundam Explained show.
That's right. See y'all.
Cheers.